Evan thought the strange sound was just the wind slipping between the buildings until he heard it again. A faint, trembling cry that didn't belong in a city alley, and certainly not to something that small. But when he finally found the source, his entire world stopped. Because lying on the cold concrete was a creature so tiny, so impossibly fragile, it didn't even look real. And the moment Evan lifted it, he realized. Its heart was beating, but it shouldn't have been. What the vet later discovered about this puppy would leave the entire clinic in tears. Evan Price had driven this route hundreds of times, long enough to know every flickering street lamp and every puddle on Rainier Avenue that never seemed to dry. Seattle's night rain was a familiar companion, soft, steady, and oddly comforting after a long shift repairing electrical panels across the city. He was exhausted, the kind of tired that sank into his bones, but the quiet of the late hour helped him unwind. The world felt muted, slowed, almost gentle. That was why the sound cut through him so sharply. At first, he assumed it was a faulty transformer humming somewhere behind the apartment complexes, an everyday annoyance he could diagnose in seconds. It was high-pitched, quick and thin, almost like a tiny alarm struggling to stay alive. But the more he listened, the more he realized it wasn't mechanical at all. It trembled, it quivered, it carried a plea. Evan slowed his truck. The sound came again, softer now, but unmistakably alive. He rolled down the window and leaned out into the drizzle. The night was empty, almost unnervingly still, except for that faint cry threading through the cold air like a thread begging not to be snapped. He felt a tug in his chest, something instinctive, something human. He put the truck in park. Between two tall buildings was a narrow cut-through walkway, barely lit, its concrete walls dripping with rainwater. He grabbed a flashlight from the passenger seat and stepped out into the night. A breeze pushed against him, carrying the smell of wet cardboard and old garbage bins. The sound returned, thin and desperate, echoing off the walls. As he moved deeper into the gap between buildings, the ambient noise of the city faded completely. Only the whisper of rain remained, and beneath it, there it was again. Evan angled his flashlight, sweeping the beam across the ground. Nothing. He crouched, listening hard. A tiny cry, no louder than a swallowed sob, came from behind a collapsed cardboard box near the back wall. He approached slowly, heart thumping louder than the rain. He nudged the soggy cardboard aside with the tip of his boot and froze. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. Curled against a damp sweatshirt was a puppy so small he first mistook it for a toy charm. Its entire body fit into the hollow of Evan's palm when he lifted it gently. Its fur was soaked, its ribs visible beneath thin skin, and its breathing came in, rapid, uneven pulses. Its eyes opened for just a second, glassy, pleading, clinging to something it wasn't sure existed anymore. Evan swallowed hard. He'd rescued injured birds, stray cats, even a raccoon that wandered too close to a transformer, but never had he seen a creature this tiny still fighting for breath. A scrap of paper lay tucked under the sweatshirt. With his free hand, he unfolded it. Too small to survive. "I'm sorry." The words punched the air out of him. A rustle overhead made him turn sharply. Someone stood at the far end of the walkway, a man wrapped in layers of mismatched coats, hood pulled low, watching Evan with wary eyes. His voice rasped through the darkness. "Leave it," the man said. "They drop 'em here every few months. None of 'em last. That one won't either." Evan tightened his grip around the trembling scrap of life in his hand. "Who drops them?" he asked. But the man only shook his head and melted back into the shadows, as though even answering might bring trouble he couldn't afford. The puppy let out a faint gasp. Barely a sound, but enough to snap Evan out of his shock. Its tiny paw curled weakly, catching the edge of his glove. That single gesture carried more desperation than any cry could. "You're still trying," he whispered. God, you're still trying. Rain drummed softly against the metal dumpsters. Evan looked down at the little creature, its eyelids fluttering, its chest heaving in uneven shivers. Something inside him shifted, a determination he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't sure why or where the feeling came from, but he knew one thing. He couldn't walk away. He slipped the puppy inside his jacket, holding it close to his body heat as he rushed back toward the truck. The warmth barely made a difference. The small body still trembled violently. He turned the heater on full blast and cupped both hands around the fragile creature, whispering steady words without even realizing it. If these stories touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Paws of Courage. Every click helps us share more tales of courage, compassion, and the incredible bonds that change lives. One dog, one human, one story at a time. The puppy stirred faintly, almost as if answering. Evan pulled onto the street, driving one-handed, the other never leaving the small bundle against his chest. He needed light, warmth, anything. Every few seconds he glanced down, terrified he would look too late. The rain grew heavier, streaking across the windshield like silver threads unraveling from the sky. Halfway home, the puppy's breathing faltered. A tiny twitch, then stillness. Too still. No, hey, stay with me, Evan whispered, voice cracking. He pulled over under a street lamp, flipped on the truck's interior light. The little body lay limp in his palm. He pressed a finger, the lightest touch, against its chest. A faint flutter, then another, but weaker. Evan shut his eyes, steadying himself. He'd seen enough electrical failures to know when something was losing power. This pup was losing power. Fast. He reached across his dashboard, grabbed a small insulated tool pouch, and slid it between the truck's heater vent and his chest to create a pocket of concentrated warmth around the puppy. Heat gathered slowly, and after what felt like hours but was only seconds, a faint tremor passed through the tiny body. Then a breath, thin, shaky, impossibly small. Evan exhaled in relief, though fear still clamped around his throat. "You're fighting," he murmured. "All right, if you're fighting, I'm fighting." He pulled back onto the road, driving with purpose now. The night no longer felt quiet or calming. It felt urgent, fragile, alive. And in his jacket, barely bigger than a closed fist, a life hung in the balance, one he had found by accident, or maybe not by accident at all. As he approached his neighborhood, he glanced down again. The puppy's eyes opened just enough to meet his. It was the smallest, weakest gaze he had ever seen, and yet somehow it begged him to try. And Evan knew he would, at any cost. The rain had eased by the time Evan pulled into the small gravel lot behind his apartment building, but the cold was settling in deeper, the kind that seeped through clothes and bone and made everything feel heavier. He stepped out carefully, cradling the tiny puppy inside his jacket as if even the wind might harm it. The drive home had steadied the pup's breathing a little, but its body remained frighteningly limp, its warmth nearly non-existent. Every few steps, Evan felt it twitch. Small, faint reminders that time was running out. He hurried up the stairs, unlocked his door, and nudged it shut with his foot. The apartment was quiet and dim, still carrying the chill of the outside air. He flipped on the hallway light and gently pulled the puppy from his jacket. Under the bright bulb, its size was even more shocking. Barely larger than a newborn mouse, its tiny paws curled inward, its head wobbling slightly before resting in the center of Evan's palm. Its eyes were half open, clouded, pleading in their weakness. "Not here," Evan murmured with determination. "Not tonight." He carried the pup to the kitchen counter, turning on the overhead light. The brightness felt harsh against the fragile life on his hand, but it made everything clear. He was holding something so impossibly small, it didn't seem meant for this world. He grabbed a dish towel, folding it 3 times to create a soft bed, then set the puppy down. It let out a sound, less a whimper and more a breath with intention behind it. Evan's throat tightened. He had heard many distress sounds in his line of work, alarms failing, voltage drops, sirens, but none had ever carried the weight this tiny cry did. He stepped away to grab warm water and another towel, but the moment he moved, the pup's body tensed. It wasn't loud, but there was a desperate edge to the small gasp that escaped its throat. Evan paused. It was reaching, not with strength, but with instinct. Its paw, no bigger than a bean, twitched toward him. "I'm right here," he said softly, returning quickly. He heated water in the microwave, dipped the towel into it, wrung it out, then pressed it gently around the pup. Slowly, very slowly, the trembling eased. Its breathing grew steadier, though still fragile. As he worked, the memory of the man in the alley flickered across his mind. Leave it. None survived. There had been no malice in the man's voice, only the tired acceptance of someone who'd seen too much failure. But Evan wasn't ready to accept anything yet. He picked up the damp sweatshirt the puppy had been found wrapped in. It smelled faintly of mold and cigarettes, and as he shook it out, a small folded slip of paper tumbled onto the counter. Evan unfolded it. The same handwriting as before, the same message. Too small to survive. "I'm sorry." But now he saw something the darkness had hidden. A smudged fingerprint beside the last word, pressed hard enough to warp the ink. Whoever wrote it hadn't simply abandoned the puppy. Something in that mark felt frantic, maybe even guilty. "Who did this to you?" Evan whispered. The pup shifted inside the warm towel, letting out a faint puff of air. Evan leaned closer, watching its tiny chest rise and fall. Each breath looked like a miracle and a warning at the same time. He moved to the sink, washed his hands, then returned to check the pup again. Its eyes fluttered open, revealing a surprising clarity, crystal-like, fragile, yet aware. It blinked once, twice, then, as if gathering the last of its strength, it lifted its head no more than a fraction of an inch. The effort exhausted it. Its head fell back, its breath catching. No, easy," Evan murmured, cupping his hands around its body to steady the warmth. He didn't know much about neonatal puppies, but he knew warmth was life. He hurried to the living room, grabbed the heating pad he used for back pain, and returned to the kitchen. He folded the towel around the pup, placed it on top of the pad set to low heat, and held his breath as he watched. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the tiniest movement. Its paw uncurled slightly. Another breath came, then another, weak but persistent. The puppy's eyelids fluttered once more before closing. "You're holding on," Evan said. Relief mingled with dread. He pulled his phone from his pocket, searching frantically for any emergency vet still open at this hour. One clinic showed a dim green indicator, open 24 hours, Dr. Bowen's clinic, a name he recognized but had never visited. "That's where we're going," he said, lifting the towel-wrapped bundle. "You stay with me until then." Before he left, he tucked the slip of paper and the torn sweatshirt into a plastic bag. Something about them felt important, though he couldn't explain why. They didn't just tell a story of abandonment. They hinted at a pattern. As he headed back to his truck, the crisp night air hit him again. The city felt different now. Colder, heavier, almost watchful. He glanced down at the pup nestled against him. Its breaths were faint but present. "We're not done," Evan said quietly. "Not even close." Just as he reached the driver's side door, a voice cut through the night. "You found another one?" Evan turned. The homeless man from the alley stood near a streetlight, the dim glow outlining his worn features. He wasn't threatening, just hauntingly resigned. "Another one?" Evan asked. The man nodded. 4th this year, always the same size, always left in that spot. Evan felt a chill unrelated to the cold. Do you know who's leaving them? The man rubbed his face tiredly. People who don't care. People who only want the ones that live long enough to sell. The rest? He glanced at the bundle in Evan's arms. They get tossed. Evan felt the weight of the tiny heartbeat against him. He opened his mouth to ask more, but the man was already turning away. Good luck, the man said without looking back. You'll need it. Evan watched him disappear into the shadows, unease twisting in his gut. This wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of something bigger, something darker. He climbed into the truck, securing the heating pad beside him. The puppy stirred faintly, as if sensing the motion. Hang on, he whispered. I'm getting you help. When he started the engine and pulled onto the empty road, the city lights reflected on the wet pavement like scattered stars, and in the small pocket of warmth beside him lay a life so delicate, yet so determined, it felt as though the whole night was holding its breath to see what would happen next. Evan kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other cupped gently over the towel-wrapped bundle resting on the passenger seat. The heating pad beneath it gave off a soft warmth, but not nearly enough to wash away the fear tightening around his chest. Every few seconds he leaned over just slightly, listening, waiting, hoping for another tiny breath. The truck's engine hummed steadily, but to Evan, it felt like the entire world was suspended in a fragile silence, broken only by the faintest flutter of life beside him. The clinic was 12 minutes away. He counted every second. Halfway through the drive, the puppy's breathing changed. It wasn't a cry and it wasn't movement. It was the absence of both. Evan's heart lurched. He pulled the truck over beneath a flickering street lamp and switched on the dome light. The pup lay motionless, its tiny legs curled inward, its chest frighteningly still. Hey, no, not now, Evan whispered, voice cracking. He brought the bundle closer to his face, searching for any sign of breath. There was nothing, just stillness. He pressed one fingertip, a touch as fragile as the life beneath it, against the pup's chest. For a terrible moment, the world went silent. Then, the faintest twitch. A tremor so small he might have imagined it if not for the jolt of hope that shot through him. Come on, he murmured. Stay with me. He dipped a hand inside his jacket, pressing the puppy directly against the warmth of his skin. The body felt impossibly light, like lifting a fallen leaf. The cold radiating from it sent a spike of panic through him. No, he whispered fiercely. You don't quit. Not now. He rubbed tiny circles over its ribcage with his smallest finger, trying to stimulate any lingering instinct to breathe. For long seconds, nothing happened. Then, a gasp. Weak, fragile, but real. Evan let out a shaky breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The puppy gave another faint rise of its chest, then another, settling into a shallow rhythm. That's it, Evan said, voice thick with relief. You fight, and I'll fight with you. I'm not going anywhere. He held the pup against him as he steered back onto the road, every heartbeat, both his and the puppy's, echoing far louder in his mind than the rain tapping on the windshield. The closer he got to home, the more he understood that time wasn't on their side. He needed to keep the puppy warm, nourished, alive long enough to get to Dr. Bowen. But first, he had to stabilize it. The clinic was open, but the puppy didn't look like it could survive another minute in the truck. By the time he reached his apartment again, the puppy's breaths had grown faint. He rushed inside and shut the door behind him with his heel. The kitchen counter was still set up from earlier. He laid the puppy on the folded towel and turned the heating pad up slightly. The warmth spread gradually, but the pup remained limp. You're not done, he said, forcing steadiness into his voice. Not tonight. He grabbed a mug, filled it halfway with warm water, and placed it beneath the towel to create a pocket of rising heat. As he adjusted the towel around the tiny body, the pup's eyelids quivered. Its paw, barely formed, twitched forward until it rested against the side of his finger. The gesture, so small, so painfully hopeful, nearly broke him. "I've got you," he whispered. He opened a cabinet and searched desperately for something he could use to feed it. He found a small syringe used years ago when his sister's cat needed liquid medicine. He washed it, warmed a small amount of goat's milk he kept for emergencies on job sites, and knelt beside the counter. The puppy didn't respond at first. Its mouth remained closed, its body slack. Evan gently tapped around its muzzle until the tiny jaw loosened just enough to slip a drop of warm milk inside. For a moment it lay still, and Evan feared the worst. Then a tremble passed through its body, and the smallest tongue he had ever seen flicked forward, licking weakly at the drop. "There you go," he said softly. Encouragement trembled through every word. He offered another drop, then another. The pup drank the way a candle flickers in the wind, dimly, uncertainly, but refusing to be snuffed out. When the tiny body finally slumped again, exhausted but no longer cold, Evan wrapped it back in the towel and pulled it against his chest as he sat on the floor. He leaned back against the kitchen cabinets and held the little creature close, listening to the rain outside. It was steady, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. "You're still here," he whispered, "and as long as you're here, I'm not giving up." He stayed like that for a long time, long enough for exhaustion to pull heavily at his shoulders, long enough for doubt to creep in around the edges of his resolve. But every time his eyes started to close, he felt a faint movement beneath the towel, a reminder, a plea. Sometime near dawn, the pup stirred again, its tiny paw pressed weakly but deliberately against his thumb. Evan froze, watching. The small creature lifted its head a fraction of an inch and let out a faint, breathy sound, almost a sigh. It wasn't strength, it wasn't recovery, but it was will. Evan felt something inside him anchor more firmly than ever before. "You're telling me you want to live," he said quietly. "All right, then I'm taking you to someone who can help keep you here." He stood carefully, still holding the pup close, and grabbed his keys from the counter. He checked the towel, checked the heating pad, checked the fragile rise and fall of that impossibly small chest. Then he headed for the door. "You fought through the night," he murmured as he stepped outside into the gray morning. "Now it's my turn. We're going to Dr. Bowen, and whatever happens, you won't face it alone." With that promise hanging in the cold morning air, Evan hurried toward the truck, the tiny heartbeat against his chest guiding every step. The morning sky hung low over Seattle, gray and heavy, as though the clouds themselves were holding their breath. Evan drove with both hands gripping the steering wheel, but his attention stayed fixed on the tiny bundle tucked inside his jacket. Each time the truck bounced over a pothole, he felt the puppy stir, or sometimes not stir at all, and every moment of stillness twisted his stomach tighter. The clinic was only a few blocks ahead, its familiar blue sign glowing faintly in the mist. When he pulled into the parking lot, the building looked quiet for an early hour. A neon "Open 24 hours" sign buzzed in the window, but the lobby behind it was still dim. Evan hurried across the wet pavement, cradling the puppy against his chest, shielding it from the morning chill. The bell above the clinic door chimed as he stepped inside. Warmth and the faint scent of antiseptic drifted toward him. A woman at the reception desk, her name tag read Molly, looked up with a polite smile. But the moment her gaze fell to the bundle in Evan's hands, her expression changed entirely. Her eyes widened, and she rose halfway from her chair. Is that a puppy?" she whispered, stunned. "Yes," Evan said. His voice shook. "He's barely holding on. I need someone to look at him now." Molly didn't hesitate. She hit a button on the desk phone. "Dr. Bowen, we have an emergency. You should see this." Moments later, a door swung open at the far end of the hallway. Dr. Thomas Bowen stepped out, broad-shouldered, gray-haired, with the steady presence of someone who'd seen just about everything a creature could suffer and survive. His tired eyes landed on Evan first, then drifted to the tiny shape in his arms. "Let's get him into an exam room," the doctor said. He motioned Evan forward and guided him into a small room lined with equipment. Evan gently laid the puppy on the stainless steel table. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, the creature looked impossibly small, smaller than even Evan remembered. A shudder ran through him as fear tightened in his throat. Dr. Bowen slipped on gloves with practiced precision, but the moment he leaned in and truly saw the puppy, his hands froze mid-air, his brows creased. Then his whole face shifted, shock, disbelief, and something almost like sorrow. "My God," he murmured. He didn't touch the pup at first, as though even the faintest pressure might break it. This can't be real." Evan swallowed hard. He was abandoned in an alley, wrapped in an old sweatshirt. No mother, no litter. Dr. Bowen didn't answer. He bent low, bringing his face close to the tiny chest, his eyes narrowing as he watched the faint rise and fall of the puppy's breath. Then he placed 2 fingers, not pressing, just hovering over the pup's ribs, as if gauging whether the creature could withstand even his touch. When he finally reached for his stethoscope, his movements had changed. They were slower, gentler, as though he were handling something sacred. The room fell silent. Evan watched every shift of the vet's expression. He saw the moment the stethoscope met the tiny chest, saw the moment the doctor's eyes fluttered shut, saw the moment something inside the man seemed to break. Dr. Bowen pulled the earpieces from his ears and stepped back, bracing one hand on the counter. "This puppy," he began, his voice shaking, "should not be alive." Evan's heart clenched. "What do you mean?" "He's weak, but—" "No," the doctor said, looking up with eyes that glistened. "I mean he should not exist in this condition. His heart is beating stronger than it should, faster than it should. He's underdeveloped severely. By all medical logic, he should have died hours, maybe days ago." He removed his gloves abruptly, as though he needed to feel the ground beneath his feet. "I've been a veterinarian for over 20 years, he continued quietly. "I've treated newborns, premature pups, litters abandoned right after birth. But I have never seen one this small. Still fighting." The puppy whimpered then, a sound like a thread snapping in the air. A tiny paw twitched upward, brushing the vet's finger. Dr. Bowen froze. Then something extraordinary happened. His composure cracked, his jaw trembled, his eyes filled, and before Evan could process it, a tear slid down the veterinarian's cheek. Molly, who had lingered near the doorway, covered her mouth with her hand. "Doctor," she whispered. But the vet shook his head, overwhelmed. He pressed his fingertips gently against the puppy's paw, no larger than a pencil eraser, and let out a breath that shuddered from somewhere deep inside. "It's like he's begging us not to give up on him," Dr. Bowen said hoarsely. "Like he knows what's happening." Evan felt his own eyes burn. The pup shifted again, striving toward the warmth of whichever hand touched it. The effort looked painful, impossible, and yet it kept trying. What do we do?" Evan asked, trying not to let his voice break. "Tell me what he needs." Slowly, Dr. Bowen wiped his face with the back of his wrist. He took a deep breath, pulling himself back to professionalism, though not quite regaining the old steadiness. "We fight with him," he said finally. "He's asking us to. And when an animal this weak keeps fighting, we owe him everything we've got." He turned to Molly. "Warm incubator. Set it to the lowest neonatal setting. Get the micro-feeding kit." As she hurried out, Evan stepped closer to the table. He placed a hand beside the puppy, offering warmth and presence. The tiny creature shifted, pressing its head, barely more than a pebble, against his fingertip. The gesture hit Evan with the force of a blow. It wasn't strength. It wasn't sure survival. But it was will. Pure, desperate will. Dr. Bowen watched silently, the emotion still raw in his eyes. "You didn't just bring me a puppy," he said softly. "You brought me a miracle." Molly returned with equipment, and together the three of them worked to stabilize the fragile creature. As they did, the doctor looked at Evan, not with pity, but with something gentler, deeper. "You saved him from dying alone," he said. "Now we'll see if he can make it beyond that." Evan nodded, throat too tight for words. He rested a hand over the incubator as the tiny body inside fought for another breath. Outside, morning rain tapped steadily against the windows as though the world itself was waiting for the outcome. And inside the clinic, 3 people held their breath for the smallest life they had ever seen. The incubator hummed softly, a steady, warm rhythm that stood in sharp contrast to the ragged breaths puffing from the tiny body inside it. Evan stood close enough that his breath fogged the glass. Every few seconds he glanced at Dr. Bowen, searching his face for reassurance, something, anything that they were doing enough. But the vet's expression stayed grave, lined with the weight of knowledge he had not yet shared. Molly adjusted the temperature controls with a gentle hand. "He's stabilizing," she whispered, though her voice carried no certainty. "For now." "For now," Dr. Bowen echoed quietly, almost to himself. Evan heard the tone but kept his eyes locked on the puppy. Its chest rose and fell unsteadily, but it was movement that hadn't existed in the alley or during that terrifying moment on the road. The towel beneath it was warmed from both the incubator and the faint energy of its tiny body, a fragile synergy of science and willpower. "What happens next?" Evan asked, unable to keep the tremor from his voice. Dr. Bowen exhaled and removed his glasses, wiping the lenses with the edge of his lab coat. Not stalling, preparing himself. "Before I answer that, you need to understand what you brought in." Evan stiffened. "I already know he's tiny. I already know he shouldn't be alive. But what does that mean, really?" The veterinarian hesitated. Then he nodded toward a small round table near the corner of the exam room. "Let's sit." Evan didn't want to sit. He wanted to stand guard over the incubator as though his presence alone could keep the little one breathing. But he followed anyway, dragging a stool closer so he could still see the puppy out of the corner of his eye. When Dr. Bowen finally spoke, his voice carried the reluctant heaviness of someone who had explained this before. Too many times. "These puppies, they're intentionally bred to be as small as possible," he said. "Some people call them micro or teacup puppies. Tiny dogs sell for thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands." Evan frowned. "People want dogs this small." "They want the idea of them," Bowen said bluntly. "The problem is, to get a puppy this size, breeders often use runts or underdeveloped parents. They manipulate breeding cycles. Some even intervene during gestation to force the birth of smaller pups." Evan stared at him. "That sounds dangerous." "It's deadly," the vet replied. "Most micro puppies die within hours of being born. Some never breathe at all. Their organs are underdeveloped. Their bones are too fragile. Their hearts can't handle the strain." Molly crossed her arms, her face softening with a familiar grief. "We saw 3 earlier this year, all from around the same neighborhood, all barely bigger than this. And none of them made it," Bowen finished. The words hit Evan like a gust of cold air. He felt it pierce straight through the fragile hope he'd built since finding the little one. "So someone is breeding them nearby?" Evan asked. Bowen's frown deepened. "More likely someone is acquiring them from a backyard breeder, and when the pups fail to thrive, which they almost always do, they get dumped." Evan swallowed hard, remembering the crumpled sweatshirt, the soggy cardboard box, and the note that read, "Too small to survive." "I'm sorry. Whoever left him wasn't a monster," Evan said quietly, surprising himself with the thought. That note, I don't know. It felt more like guilt than cruelty. Bowen nodded. Some people truly don't understand how sick these puppies can be. They think they're just fragile or slow to grow. They panic when things get worse. Molly stepped closer, but panic doesn't explain leaving 4 pups in the same alley. No, Bowen agreed softly. It doesn't. A silence settled between them, one that wrapped the room as tightly as the rain still falling outside. Evan felt anger rise with every slow breath he took. Anger at whoever started this cycle. Anger at a world where a creature so helpless could be treated as disposable. But beneath the anger was something else, a deep, growing determination. "What about him?" Evan finally asked, nodding toward the incubator. "Does he have a chance?" Bowen stood and walked back to the glass enclosure. He placed a hand against it, watching the tiny rise and fall of the pup's chest. "He's a fighter, I won't deny that. But fighters burn through energy fast. We need to get nutrients into him, and carefully." He opened a drawer and pulled out a miniature feeding kit, smaller than anything Evan had ever seen. "This is designed for wildlife neonates," Bowen explained. "Baby squirrels, small birds. It may work for him if he has the strength to swallow." "And if he doesn't?" Evan asked. "Then we manage his warmth, hydration, and oxygen, and hope his strength returns." Bowen didn't offer false comfort. "This is the most underdeveloped puppy I've ever examined, but he's also the most determined. That counts for something." Another soft whimper rose from the incubator. Evan instinctively stood and stepped closer. The puppy's head lifted, no more than a fraction of an inch, and its tiny paw touched the inside of the glass, tapping weakly, as if searching for the warmth it remembered. Something inside Evan cracked wide open. "I'm not giving up on him," he said firmly. Bowen looked at him, studying the resolve etched into his face. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Then neither am I." The exam room door creaked open, and Lena, the young veterinary assistant, stepped inside, her eyes already fixed on the incubator. She stopped short when she saw the puppy, her mouth parting in astonishment. "Oh," she breathed. "Another one." Evan's stomach tightened. "You've seen others?" Lena nodded, sadness clouding her features. 3 this year, all left in that same alley, all with handwritten notes. The first time I thought it was an accident, someone trying to do the right thing in the wrong way, but after the second and the third, she shook her head. "This isn't random." She approached the incubator slowly, leaning close. "He's even smaller than the last one," she whispered, voice thick with disbelief. Evan swallowed. "But he's still fighting." Lena's eyes softened. "Then we'll fight with him." She turned to Bowen. "What do you need?" "Warm fluids, glucose levels checked, and the neonatal feeding chart," he said. "We're doing everything we can." Lena nodded and hurried out. Bowen placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. "You brought him in just in time. Another hour outside." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Evan stepped back to the incubator, placing his palm against the glass just as the puppy shifted. The tiny creature pressed its paw toward the warmth of his hand, tapping softly, an unspoken plea that sank deep into Evan's chest. "You're not alone anymore," Evan whispered. "I promise." Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the windows in a steady rhythm. Inside, beneath the glow of the incubator's light, the smallest puppy Evan had ever seen clung to life, with a determination that defied everything the world said was possible. And 3 people, strangers until this morning, found themselves bound by the fragile heartbeat of a creature who should never have survived, yet refused to surrender. For the first 2 days after bringing the puppy home from the clinic, Evan lived hour by hour, sometimes minute by minute, because that was all the tiny creature seemed capable of holding on to. Dr. Bowen had sent him home with careful instructions, a micro-feeding syringe, and a warning that still echoed in Evan's mind. His body has no reserves. You are his reserves. So Evan became them. Every 2 hours, day and night, he warmed milk on the stove until it reached just the right temperature, tested it against his wrist, then coaxed the puppy, now officially named Pixel, into drinking a few precious drops. There were moments when Pixel swallowed eagerly, moments when he turned his head weakly as if the effort was too much, and moments when Evan feared he might stop breathing altogether. Those were the worst. Those moments stole the air from Evan's lungs just as they stole it from Pixel's. He set alarms across his phone, lining them like soldiers defending fragile territory. Midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m. There was barely time to fall asleep between feedings, yet whenever Evan's head hit the pillow, exhaustion dragged him under with frightening ease. But each time the alarm chimed, he rose without hesitation. And each time he lifted Pixel from his padded box, a shoebox lined with fleece blankets and warmed by a small heating pad. The pup pressed his tiny paw against Evan's thumb or curled into his palm with a faint, instinctive sound. That sound, too weak to be called a whimper, was enough to steady Evan's resolve every single time. On the third night, the Abba struggle escalated. Evan had just finished feeding Pixel and settled him back into the warm box. Rain pattered gently against the windows, Seattle's lullaby. Evan leaned against the kitchen counter, rubbing his hands over his tired face. He promised himself only a 5-minute rest before checking Pixel again. He closed his eyes. A sudden silence broke the rhythm of the room, not the comforting hush of rain, but a silence inside the box. Evan's eyes snapped open. He rushed forward and found Pixel motionless, stretched on his side, his body too still, too quiet. "Pixel," Evan whispered, though his voice trembled with dread. No movement. He lifted the tiny pup into his hands now shaking, and pressed his smallest finger gently against the pup's chest. No flutter, no breath. "Come on, not again." "Pixel, don't you stop on me," Evan pleaded, his voice cracking. He remembered what Dr. Bowen had shown him, a movement so delicate it barely counted as CPR. Evan placed the pad of his pinky against Pixel's chest and began gentle rhythmic presses, counting softly. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. He kept going. "Come on, little guy. Fight." Then, there. A twitch beneath his finger, a gasp so thin it barely stirred the fur on Pixel's muzzle. Evan's knees weakened with relief. "There you go. There you go." He held the tiny pup against his bare chest again, letting body heat transfer back into that fragile, flickering life. Pixel's breathing returned, shallow but steady. Evan sat on the floor, back against the cabinet, holding the puppy as the minutes crawled by. He refused to move, barely dared to blink. His exhaustion faded under a shot of adrenaline and fear, leaving him wide awake. He knew then this wasn't a temporary commitment. This was a battle. Pixel's fight to live and his own fight to keep Pixel from fighting alone. The next day brought another challenge. Evan had to return to part of his electrical repair route, but working from home allowed him some flexibility. So he tucked Pixel into the inside pocket of his work jacket, wrapped safely in a small cloth, and kept warm with a hand warmer wrapped in insulation so it wouldn't overheat him. Pixel lay nestled close to Evan's heartbeat, occasionally stirring or letting out tiny breaths that Evan counted like blessings. But late that afternoon, something he hadn't anticipated happened. A neighborhood-wide power failure. Evan was standing on his balcony when everything around him blinked off. Apartment lights, street lamps. The entire block dimmed into sudden darkness, and somewhere inside his home, Pixel's heating pad followed the same fate. The temperature in the apartment dropped quickly. No, not now," Evan muttered, rushing back inside. He lunged for the box. Pixel was already colder than he should have been. Without stable heat, his underdeveloped body would lose warmth faster than it could produce it. "Hang on, Pixel. I've got you." He wrapped the puppy in layers of fleece and tucked him deep inside his jacket. Then he grabbed his tool belt and sprinted down the stairs toward the utility shed. Rain pelted him. Wind cut through his clothes. The outage was bad, worse than most. A blown transformer had taken out the entire block's heating and electrical stability. Crews were already dispatched, but they were miles away. Evan didn't have miles. He had minutes. He forced open the utility panel, rain dripping from his hair into his eyes, and began diagnosing the issue by flashlight. His fingers worked with practiced precision, though his mind kept drifting to the faint movements inside his jacket. "Stay with me," he muttered as he examined a charred relay switch. Pixel trembled weakly in response. Evan almost smiled despite the panic clawing his chest. "Good. Keep talking to me." It took him 20 grueling minutes to reroute the damaged line and jump the circuit safely, a maneuver he'd never attempt under normal circumstances. But tonight was not normal. Tonight was survival. When the transformer hummed back to life and the nearby building lights blinked on, Evan exhaled a breath so deep it nearly doubled him over. He sprinted back upstairs, plugged in the heating pad, and set Pixel's box directly over it. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the pup's shivers eased. As Pixel settled into the warmth again, his head lifted just enough for his nose to brush Evan's wrist. The contact was faint, but it felt like a thank you, or a promise. "You're something else," Evan whispered. "You know that." Pixel's tiny paw flexed, resting against Evan's skin, and for a moment, the fear of the day melted into something gentler, something hopeful. Evan sat beside the box long after Pixel fell asleep, his eyes heavy but his heart steadier than it had been in days. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight Pixel had survived again. And as long as Pixel kept fighting, Evan knew, without question, he would fight too. Days slipped into weeks, each one marked by small triumphs and terrifying setbacks. Evan lived by alarm clocks, feeding schedules and the subtle language of Pixel's breaths. He had memorized every sound the tiny pup made, every hiccup, every faint cry, every silence that lasted 1 second too long. He had grown used to sleeping in short bursts on the couch, Pixel resting on his chest or tucked inside the fleece-lined pocket of his sweatshirt. The little creature had become a heartbeat stitched into Evan's daily rhythm. And slowly, miraculously, Pixel began to show signs of strength. It started with a twitch of the leg, so slight Evan thought he imagined it. Then Pixel managed to lift his head just long enough to look at Evan with eyes clearer than they had ever been. One morning, after a long night of restlessness, Pixel surprised him by taking 2 shaky steps inside the shoebox-turned nursery. Evan had frozen in place, hands hovering as though he was witnessing something sacred. "That's it, little guy," he whispered, voice breaking into a smile. "One step at a time." Pixel stumbled immediately afterward, but it didn't matter. It was progress. Real progress. And progress felt like oxygen. A few days later, Evan decided Pixel was strong enough for a follow-up visit to Dr. Bowen. He lined the carrier with soft cloths and tucked a warm hand warmer beneath a folded towel. Pixel curled into the nest, letting out a faint but content sigh as Evan carried him to the truck. The weather had shifted since the night they first met. The rain had eased, and cool sunlight streamed across the pavement. Even the city felt lighter, like the world was cautiously waiting to see what came next. When Evan walked into the clinic lobby, Molly gasped aloud. "Oh my lord, he's still with us," she exclaimed, rushing toward them. "He's better," Evan said with cautious pride. "Not out of danger, but better." Pixel peered out from the carrier, blinking up at her. She covered her heart with her hand. That little face, I never thought I'd see it again. Before Evan could respond, the exam room door opened and Dr. Bowen stepped out. His eyes fell immediately on the carrier. For a moment he didn't move at all. Then a slow, stunned smile spread across his face. "Well, I'll be," he murmured, his voice thick with disbelief. "Bring him in." Inside the exam room, Bowen moved gently, almost reverently, as he lifted Pixel from the carrier. The puppy weighed barely more than a handful, but his heartbeat, though still rapid, felt stronger, his breathing steadier, his paw, once limp, pressed tentatively against Bowen's glove. The vet swallowed hard. "He shouldn't be alive," Bowen whispered, shaking his head. "But he's not just alive. He's improving." Pixel let out a tiny squeak. As if disagreeing with Bowen's astonishment, Evan laughed softly. "He's been giving me grief like that all week." Bowen performed the exam carefully, checking Pixel's temperature, hydration, and glucose levels. With each reading, his expression loosened a little more. When he finished, he removed his gloves and leaned back against the counter. This is extraordinary," he said, voice trembling with emotion. "You've kept him alive through a stage most micropups never reach." Evan felt relief wash over him, warm and overwhelming. "So he has a chance, a real one?" Bowen nodded slowly. "A small chance, but real." Pixel, curled in a soft towel, blinked up at them both. His little chest rose and fell with determination. Molly appeared at the doorway again, curiosity getting the better of her. When she saw Pixel sitting up, however wobbly, her eyes filled. "He's so tiny, but look at him," she whispered. "He's fighting." Bowen glanced at Evan. "Most pups like him don't make it through the first 24 hours. You've given him weeks." He paused. "And he still has the will to live. A stronger will than I've ever seen." Pixel tried to stand just then, managed half a second of balance, then toppled gently onto Bowen's hand. The vet chuckled, wiping his eyes quickly. "All right, little warrior, let's get you weighed." Pixel weighed barely more than a large egg, but he was heavier than last time, proof that every sleepless night, every feeding, every moment of fear had mattered. After the exam, Bowen's tone shifted slightly, less clinical, more personal. "There's something you should know," he said, a reason he might be surviving longer than expected. Evan tensed. "What is it?" Bowen gestured for him to come closer. "Some runts, the rarest ones, are born with unusually strong cardiac responses. Their hearts beat harder, faster, almost as if trying to compensate for the rest of their body." Like they were built to fight?" Evan asked. Bowen nodded. "Exactly. Pixel might be one of them. It doesn't guarantee he'll survive, but it explains why he's still here, why he's pushing so hard." As though responding, Pixel nudged toward Evan's hand. Evan extended a finger and Pixel pressed his paw against it, gripping as tightly as his tiny body allowed. Bowen's eyes softened. "That right there. That's why we do this." Pixel clung to Evan's finger, his eyes bright but tired. It was a wordless promise, a reminder of the night they first met and every battle fought since. When they finished, Bowen handed Pixel back to Evan. "You're doing everything right," the vet said. "Just keep giving him warmth, food, and time. He needs you more than ever now." On the ride home, Pixel curled into Evan's chest. The sun peeked through the windshield, warming them both. Pixel's breath fluttered rhythmically, fragile but steady. Evan stroked the tiny pup, marveling at how something so small could fill so much of his heart. "You're not just surviving anymore," he murmured. "You're growing, and I'm right here, every step." Pixel responded with the smallest wag of his tail, a shaky, uncertain motion that nevertheless sent a rush of joy through Evan's entire being. For the first time since that night in the alley, hope didn't feel like a fragile dream. It felt like the beginning of something real, something worth fighting for. A few more weeks passed, marked by steady progress and moments Evan still replayed in quiet awe. Pixel's first confident step, his first tiny bark that sounded more like a squeak. The first time he managed to wobble across the couch cushion toward Evan with unmistakable purpose. Each milestone stitched itself into Evan's heart, binding the two of them together more tightly than he could have imagined on that rain-soaked night when he found the pup shivering in an alley. Pixel was still impossibly small, no bigger than a man's hand, but he was alive in a way that felt larger than life itself. Neighbors, once strangers to Evan, now greeted him with warm smiles whenever they spotted Pixel tucked inside his jacket or perched on his shoulder. Children asked to pet him, their eyes wide with wonder. Older folks from the building would gently pinch Pixel's cheek with fingertips softer than their voices. The pup had become a quiet legend in the complex, a symbol of the impossible made real. But it was the return visit to Dr. Bowen's clinic that would anchor Pixel's story forever. Evan walked through the front doors carrying Pixel in a soft sling across his chest. Molly looked up from her desk and froze, a hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, standing. "He's grown." Pixel peeked out from the sling and let out a tiny bark. Molly almost cried on the spot. "You loud little miracle," she laughed, wiping the corners of her eyes. Other pet owners turned their heads, their expressions melting with surprise and tenderness as they watched the smallest puppy they had ever seen hold his head high with newly found strength. Evan couldn't help smiling. He's full of attitude these days. The exam room door opened and Dr. Bowen stepped out, mid-sentence with another tech about a recovering Labrador. His words fell away when he spotted Pixel. He stopped walking. He stopped breathing too. Pixel wriggled in the sling as if to say, "Yes, it's me. Look at me now." Slowly, disbelievingly, Bowen approached. "Is that him?" he asked, voice thick. "It's him," Evan said softly. "Still here? Still fighting?" Carefully, as though he were handling something sacred, Bowen scooped Pixel into his hands. The pup settled comfortably, tail wagging with tiny, determined strokes. Bowen examined him with tender precision, checking his vitals, his limbs, his breathing. Pixel pressed a paw onto the doctor's thumb, a familiar gesture, but this time filled with far more strength. The vet's eyes grew glossy. He's thriving," Bowen whispered, wiping at his eyes with the back of his wrist. "Not just surviving, thriving. I never thought I'd see this day." Pixel let out a short, proud bark. Bowen laughed through the tears. "Listen to that. He's got more spirit than half the dogs I treat." Evan felt his throat tighten. "You told me once he was a miracle. Now he's proving it." Bowen shook his head slowly, looking at Pixel as though witnessing something sacred. "I've worked in this field for over 2 decades. I've seen miracles of every kind. But I've never seen a pup this small, this underdeveloped, come this far." His voice cracked. He shouldn't have lived past a single night. Yet here he is, demanding to be seen. Pixel nuzzled the vet's hand. "And heard," Bowen added, smiling. The emotion in the room grew too deep for words. Even Molly, standing at the doorway, wiped tears from her cheeks. "Pixel's story," she whispered. "People need to hear it. It gives hope." Evan nodded slowly, realizing she was right. Pixel had fought through odds no creature should endure. And in doing so, he had awakened something inside Evan, something he hadn't felt in years. A sense of purpose, of connection, of unexpected second chances. Bowen placed Pixel back into Evan's hands, lingering for a moment as if reluctant to let go. "He belongs with you," the vet said, his voice soft but certain. "You're the reason he's here, and now he'll remind you every day what strength truly looks like." Pixel curled into Evan's chest, letting out a small sigh of contentment. On the drive home, Seattle's skyline shimmered under a pale sun. Pixel perched on Evan's shoulder, peering curiously out the window as though seeing the world he had nearly never known. "You did it," Evan murmured. "You proved them all wrong." Pixel licked Evan's cheek, his version of agreement. Back at the apartment, Evan carried Pixel onto the balcony. The city stretched before them, alive with movement and light. Pixel placed his tiny paw over Evan's heart, the same gesture he had used since the first night. "You were abandoned," Evan whispered, "left with no chance. But you chose to fight, and because of that, you found me." Pixel looked up with bright, trusting eyes. "And I found you," Evan finished, voice thick with emotion. The wind moved softly around them, brushing through Pixel's fur like a quiet blessing. Evan knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. Pixel would always be small, fragile, more vulnerable than most dogs. But none of that mattered. Pixel had already proven that size didn't dictate strength, and that the will to live could outshine the impossible. Pixel nudged his chin, then turned toward the open sky as if addressing something bigger than either of them. Evan let out a long, steady breath. "If this little puppy can fight through every impossible odd," he said softly, almost as if speaking to anyone who might one day hear their story, "then none of us have an excuse to give up on our own battles." Pixel barked faintly, sealing the moment. Hope wasn't just Pixel's story anymore. It was a reminder, an invitation etched into the smallest heartbeat that had ever changed Evan's life. Pixel had not only survived, he had transformed every life he touched, and as Evan lifted the tiny pup into his arms, he knew the truth with absolute certainty. Pixel wasn't just a miracle. He was proof that even the smallest life could carry the greatest strength and echo far beyond the moment it began.